Get out! You don't belong here! The slap comes without warning. Sarah's palm strikes Maya's cheek hard enough to turn heads across the restaurant.
You think you can just walk
Maya's
in here and
purse
tell me
hits
how
the
to do
floor.
my job?
Her wedding ring bounces once, twice, then
simply
slides
stating the
under
facts.
table 12. Sarah
can't just
kicks
come
the
in here and
scattered
expect-
contents, lipstick, car keys, credit
Ma'am,
cards,
please,
toward the
let's
kitchen
discuss
like
this
debris.
calmly.
Maybe next time you'll think twice before trying to eat somewhere decent, Sarah hisses, loud enough for everyone to hear. Maya stays calm, too calm. She kneels slowly, gathering her things while conversations die around them. Phone cameras emerge from every direction. Maya's fingers find her ring. When she stands and meets Sarah's eyes, something in her expression makes the waitress take an involuntary step back. Have you ever seen someone make an enemy they couldn't possibly imagine? Maya had arrived at Bellacourt 15 minutes ago with a confirmed reservation. The hostess, a blonde 20-something named Sarah Mitchell, had looked her up and down like she was appraising livestock at auction. "I'm sorry, but I don't see any reservation under that name," Sarah had lied smoothly, despite Maya clearly seeing Rossetti Party, Table 12, 3 p.m. displayed on the digital board behind her. "Perhaps you could check again? Johnson Rossetti?" Maya's voice remained level. Professional. She'd learned long ago that composure was her greatest weapon. Sarah's smile turned plastic, stretched thin with barely concealed disdain. "Honey, I think there's been some confusion. Our dinner prices start at $45 per entree. Maybe you'd be more comfortable somewhere." She gestured vaguely toward the window where a McDonald's golden arch was visible 3 blocks away. "More suited to your budget constraints." The insult hung between them like toxic smoke. Maya had simply nodded toward Table 12, the prime VIP spot overlooking the city skyline with its panoramic windows, and said, "I'll wait for my party to arrive." For the next 10 agonizing minutes, Sarah had performed a masterclass in systematic discrimination. She seated 3 white couples who arrived after Maya, apologizing profusely for their short wait while promising their usual table would be ready momentarily. She refilled water glasses at every occupied table except where Maya sat with increasing thirst. When Maya politely asked for a menu to browse while waiting, Sarah claimed they were all being used for other customers, while simultaneously handing fresh leather-bound menus to a family at Table 9. The middle-aged businessman at Table 6 shifted uncomfortably in his chair, clearly recognizing the obvious slight. His wife whispered urgently, "David, this is getting really uncomfortable. Should we say something?" But Sarah was just warming up, emboldened by her perceived power. When Maya's phone buzzed with a text message from Antonio, Sarah materialized instantly beside her table. "Excuse me, but we have a strict no-phone policy during peak dining hours," she announced loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. She pointed to a tiny, barely visible sign by the register that mentioned nothing whatsoever about phones or electronic devices. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Half the dining room was actively scrolling Instagram, taking food photos and checking messages between courses. But none of those diners faced Sarah's arbitrary enforcement. The tension escalated when a young white couple was seated immediately at Table 11, directly beside Maya's empty table. Sarah fawned over them, bringing complimentary breadsticks and olive tapenade within 30 seconds of their arrival. "Can I start you folks with our signature cocktails? The Bellacourt Bellini is absolutely divine," Sarah gushed, her voice dripping with fake enthusiasm. Maya watched this performance with growing understanding. This wasn't just poor service, it was deliberate, calculated humiliation designed to force her departure. The breaking point came when Maya decided to order in perfect Italian, hoping to diffuse the mounting tension with a gracious show of cultural appreciation. "Scusi, potrei avere il menù dei vini, per favore, e forse dell'acqua frizzante?" Sarah's fake smile cracked like expensive porcelain. The request was simple. "Excuse me, could I have the wine menu, please, and perhaps some sparkling water?" But hearing fluent Italian from a black woman seemed to short-circuit something fundamental in Sarah's prejudiced brain. "Look here," Sarah said, abandoning all pretense of professional courtesy. Her voice carried across the previously quiet restaurant like a bullhorn. "I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but this is a respectable family establishment. We don't need any trouble from people who think they can just walk in here demanding special treatment they haven't earned." The word trouble dripped with enough coded venom to poison the entire dining room. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Even the soft jazz playing overhead seemed to fade into uncomfortable silence. Maya glanced at her Cartier watch, a second anniversary gift from Antonio, inscribed with Sempre Insieme on the back. 2:58 p.m. He was running late from his downtown meeting, but he'd texted that he was 2 minutes out with Vinny and Marco. She could wait. She'd waited her entire life for moments like this. Giuseppe Romano, the 70-year-old head chef who'd emigrated from Naples 40 years ago, emerged from the kitchen carrying a fresh basket of warm focaccia bread. His weathered, flour-dusted face went deathly pale when he spotted Maya sitting calmly at table 12. His hands began trembling so violently that he nearly dropped the bread basket. He crossed himself rapidly and whispered something in rapid, panicked Italian that sounded like desperate prayer. Something about Familia Rossetti and Madonna Mia she doesn't know. He shuffled quickly toward the manager's office, bread completely forgotten at a nearby service station. At table 7, elderly Dorothy Carter nudged her granddaughter Jessica urgently. "Sweetheart, are you recording this situation? It already started 3 minutes ago, Grandma. This is absolutely insane." Jessica's TikTok was capturing every word, every gesture, every micro-expression. The live viewer count climbed steadily. 127, 340, 589, 1,047. Food blogger Marcus Williams at table 4 had completely abandoned his professional truffle risotto review. His fingers flew across his phone, crafting a Twitter thread that would make tomorrow's headlines: "Breaking Witnessing Blatant Racial Discrimination at Upscale Bellacourt Restaurant. Management Complicit. Thread 115th. The digital reservation board flickered ominously. "Rossetti Party, Table 12, 3 p.m. arrival, 1 minute overdue." Sarah followed Maya's glance to the board and sneered with triumphant satisfaction. "Your imaginary party is running late. How absolutely shocking." That's when Maya stood, slowly, gracefully. Her movements carried the quiet dignity of someone who'd faced worse discrimination and not just survived, but thrived. "Your kind doesn't eat here." The slap came without any warning. Sarah's palm struck Maya's cheek hard enough to echo off the marble walls and crystal chandeliers. Maya's purse hit the floor with a crash. Her wedding ring, 3 carats of flawless diamonds set in platinum, bounced once, twice, then slid toward table 12. Sarah kicked the scattered contents with deliberate, calculated malice. Designer lipstick, Mercedes car keys, platinum credit cards, all flying toward the kitchen like worthless debris. "Maybe next time you'll think twice before trying to eat somewhere decent," Sarah announced loudly, playing to her audience of shocked diners. Maya knelt slowly, gathering her belongings while conversations died completely. Phone cameras emerged from every direction like predators sensing fresh blood. Dorothy's Facebook Live exploded, 1,247 viewers and climbing exponentially. When Maya found her ring and stood to face Sarah again, something in her dark eyes made the waitress take an involuntary step backward. "Actually," Maya said quietly, her voice carrying despite its measured softness, "I believe my table is ready now." Restaurant manager Derek Collins finally emerged from his back office, drawn by the unnatural silence that had settled over his dining room like a funeral shroud. At 45, Derek had managed upscale establishments for 2 decades. He'd handled difficult customers, entitled celebrities, even health inspectors with grudges. But the electric tension crackling through Bellacourt's air was unlike anything he'd experienced. "What's going on out here?" Derek demanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to quick resolution of problems. His eyes swept the scene, Maya kneeling gracefully beside table 12, collecting scattered belongings, Sarah standing triumphant with flushed cheeks, 12 diners frozen mid-meal with phones pointed like weapons. Sarah straightened, emboldened by management backup. "This woman was causing a major disturbance, Derek." She tried to force her way into a reserved table without any valid reservation, then became increasingly aggressive when I explained our policies. Derek's gaze shifted to Maya, taking in her modest but clearly expensive clothing, her natural hair now slightly disheveled, her dark skin still bearing the faint pink outline of Sarah's handprint. His expression hardened almost imperceptibly, a micro-expression that Dorothy Carter's Facebook Live captured in brutal clarity. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave immediately," Derek announced, his tone suggesting this was non-negotiable. "You're disrupting our other guests' dining experience, and we simply cannot tolerate that level of behavior in our establishment." Maya rose slowly, her movements carrying a dancer's grace despite the humiliation. She brushed an invisible speck of dust from her Hermes blazer and met Derek's gaze with unsettling calm. "Actually," she said, her voice barely above a whisper yet somehow commanding the entire room's attention, "I believe my table is ready now." Derek's face flushed red. "Ma'am, I'm not going to ask again. Leave voluntarily or I'll call security to escort you out." As if summoned by magic, Frank Torres materialized from the restaurant's shadowy corners. At 6'2" and 250 pounds of former bouncer muscle, Frank's presence was designed to intimidate. His thick arms crossed over his chest as he positioned himself between Maya and the exit, blocking any graceful retreat. "Is there a problem here, Mr. Collins?" Frank's voice carried the kind of barely controlled menace that had cleared many troublemakers from many establishments. Maya glanced at her Cartier watch. 3:01 p.m. Antonio was officially late, but she knew he was coming. She could feel it in the air, the way atmospheric pressure drops before a thunderstorm. Her phone buzzed with an incoming text. Without breaking eye contact with Derek, she glanced at the screen. "Outside with the boys. Coming up now. Everything okay, amore?" Something shifted in Maya's expression. Not fear, not anger, but anticipation so pure it was almost predatory. At table 7, Dorothy's Facebook Live viewership had exploded to 2,847 people. Comments flooded past faster than she could read. "Call the police. This is discrimination. Where is the manager? Someone help her." Her granddaughter Jessica's TikTok had garnered 15,000 views in 4 minutes. The hashtag #Bellacourt racism was already trending locally, with videos being shared across Instagram stories and Twitter feeds throughout the city. Food blogger Marcus Williams had abandoned all pretense of reviewing dinner. His Twitter thread now contained 17 posts documenting every detail of the incident. His final post read, "Management has arrived and is escalating rather than de-escalating. This establishment is about to face a public relations nightmare of epic proportions." Even other diners were beginning to film. The businessman at table 6 had his phone discreetly recording while whispering urgently to his wife, "This is going to be everywhere by tomorrow morning." But it was Giuseppe Romano's behavior that should have warned everyone what was coming. The elderly chef had returned from the back office looking like he'd seen death itself. His hands shook as he approached Derek, flour still dusting his apron. "Signore Collins," Giuseppe whispered urgently in heavily accented English, "you must listen to me. That woman, she is—" "Giuseppe, not now," Derek snapped, irritated by the interruption. "Can't you see I'm handling a situation? But you don't understand," Giuseppe pleaded, his voice rising with genuine panic. "She is Familia Rossetti, the wife of Antonio Rossetti." Derek barely glanced at the old man. "Giuseppe, I don't have time for your old country superstitions. Take your conspiracy theories back to the kitchen." Giuseppe's face went ashen. He backed away slowly, crossing himself repeatedly while muttering prayers in rapid Italian. Outside, through Bellacourt's floor-to-ceiling windows, a black Escalade with tinted windows pulled into the valet parking zone. The vehicle sat idling for a moment, its engine purring like a sleeping predator. Maya noticed immediately. Her phone buzzed again. "Parking now. Vinny says the place looks crowded." She typed back quickly. "It's about to get more interesting." Frank, the security guard, cracked his knuckles, a sound like breaking branches that had intimidated countless troublemakers over the years. "Ma'am, Mr. Collins asked you nicely. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Sarah watched the confrontation with growing satisfaction, already composing the story she'd tell her co-workers later. How she'd handled some entitled woman who thought rules didn't apply to her. How management had backed her up completely. Derek pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over 911. "Last chance, ma'am. Leave now, or I'm calling the police for trespassing." The Escalade's doors opened. 3 figures emerged, a tall man in an impeccably tailored Italian suit, followed by two slightly shorter men whose movements suggested they were accustomed to watching their boss's back. All three wore sunglasses despite the overcast afternoon. Maya's smile widened fractionally. "Derek," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that made several diners lean forward instinctively. "Before you make that call, perhaps you should check your reservation system one more time." "I already told you," Derek began. "Check under Rossetti," Maya interrupted gently. "Antonio Rossetti." The name hung in the air like incense. Giuseppe Romano made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Derek's finger paused over his phone. Something in Maya's tone, too confident, too calm, too knowing, made him hesitate. Through the windows, the three figures from the Escalade were approaching Bellecourt's entrance. The tall one in the center moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to having doors held open for him. Maya's phone rang. Antonio's ringtone, a few bars of Sinatra's "That's Life," filled the suddenly silent restaurant. She answered on the first ring, putting the call on speaker without breaking eye contact with Derek. "Ciao, Antonio," she said, her voice warm with genuine affection. "Yes, I'm at Bellecourte. There's been a slight cultural misunderstanding." The male voice that emerged from her phone carried the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. His accent was thick Brooklyn Italian, with undertones that suggested he'd learned English as a second language. "What kind of misunderstanding, amore mio?" Maya's eyes swept the room, Derek's uncertain face, Sarah's growing confusion, Frank's aggressive posture, Giuseppe's terrified expression, 12 phones still recording every word. "The kind where your staff thinks black women don't belong in your restaurant." The silence that followed was so complete that Maya could hear her own heartbeat. Then Antonio's voice came through the speaker, quiet as a blade sliding from its sheath. "Derek, you are there, no? You know my wife Maya, yes?" Derek's phone slipped from his suddenly nerveless fingers, clattering against the marble floor like dice in a tomb. The phone hit the marble floor with a sound like breaking bones. Derek's face drained of all color as the implications crashed over him in waves. Behind the hostess station, Sarah's triumphant smile froze, then cracked like ice under pressure. Antonio's voice continued through Maya's speaker, each word dropping like stones into still water. "The woman I would burn the world down for, Derek? The woman you just allowed to be slapped in my restaurant?" "Mr. Rossetti?" Derek's voice cracked like a teenager's. He scrambled to retrieve his phone from the floor, hands shaking so violently he nearly dropped it twice more. "Sir, I didn't know. There's been a terrible mistake." Giuseppe Romano emerged fully from the kitchen, his weathered face a mask of absolute terror. "Madonna mia," he whispered, crossing himself repeatedly. "I tried to warn you, Signore Collins. I tried to tell you who she was." Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the three figures from the Escalade had reached Bellecourt's entrance. The tall man in the center, Antonio Rossetti, moved with the fluid grace of someone who had never needed to rush anywhere in his life. People moved for him. The world adjusted to his schedule. His companions, Vinnie Marconi and Marco Benedetti, flanked him with the easy alertness of men who had spent years watching for threats that never came anymore, but old habits died hard. Both wore perfectly tailored suits that did nothing to disguise the athletic builds underneath. Maya ended the call and slipped her phone into her purse with deliberate care. When she looked up, her dark eyes held something that made Frank, the security guard, take an involuntary step backward. "He'll be here in 30 seconds, she said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "Derek, Sarah, I suggest you think very carefully about your next words." Sarah's bravado finally cracked. Who is Antonio Rossetti?" she whispered to Derek, her voice barely audible over the restaurant's suddenly deafening silence. Derek couldn't answer. His throat had closed completely. He'd heard whispers, rumors, stories that circulated through the hospitality industry like urban legends, about certain restaurants that never had trouble with suppliers, never faced union problems, never dealt with the petty corruption that plagued other establishments, about owners whose names opened doors and closed mouths with equal efficiency. At Table 7, Dorothy Carter's Facebook Live had reached 4,372 viewers. The comment stream moved too fast to follow. "Oh shit, he's Mafia. She's married to a mob boss. Karen is so dead. Someone call 911. Jessica's TikTok had exploded past 50,000 views, with shares accelerating exponentially. The hashtag #MafiaWife was now trending nationally, competing with #BellaCorta for social media dominance. Food blogger Marcus Williams had stopped tweeting entirely. He sat frozen at table 4, his truffle risotto growing cold, as the magnitude of what he was witnessing slowly dawned on him. This wasn't just a discrimination story anymore. This was the kind of story that made careers, or ended them. The restaurant's front door opened with a soft chime that sounded like church bells tolling. Antonio Rossetti entered first. At 38, he possessed the kind of presence that couldn't be bought, borrowed, or faked. His Italian suit was cut so perfectly it seemed painted on. His dark hair was touched with silver at the temples, and his eyes, the same warm brown as Maya's, swept the dining room with the calculating gaze of someone accustomed to assessing threats and opportunities in seconds. Vinny and Marco followed, their movements synchronized from years of partnership. Vinny, the older of the two at 45, had the weathered face of someone who'd seen everything twice. Marco, barely 30, moved with the coiled energy of a man who still remembered what it felt like to be dangerous. Every conversation in the restaurant died instantly. Forks stopped midway to mouths. Wine glasses paused at lips. Even the soft jazz playing overhead seemed to fade to nothing. Antonio's gaze found Maya immediately, scanning her from head to toe with the protective intensity of someone checking for damage to something precious. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly when he noticed the fading pink handprint on her cheek. He crossed the dining room in 7 measured steps, his Italian leather shoes clicking against marble like a countdown timer. When he reached Maya, he took her hands in his with infinite gentleness, as if she were made of spun glass. "Mi dispiace, amore," he murmured, his voice carrying clearly in the tomb-like silence. "Are you hurt?" Maya touched her cheek where Sarah's handprint was slowly fading. "Only my pride, Caro, but that can be repaired." Antonio's eyes shifted to Derek, who was still clutching his retrieved phone like a life preserver. "Derek," he said, his voice carrying the kind of quiet authority that had once commanded absolute obedience in very different circumstances. "We need to talk, no?" Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. "Mr. Rossetti, sir, please, there's been a terrible misunderstanding." Antonio raised one hand, a simple gesture that carried the weight of absolute command. Derek's words died in his throat. "Vinny," Antonio said without turning around. "Remind me again how long we've owned this restaurant?" Vinny stepped forward slightly, his voice carrying the flat tones of someone reading statistics from a ledger. 3 years, boss. Part of the Rossetti Restaurant Group. 47 establishments across 12 states. And Maya's role in the organization? Silent partner, boss. MBA from Wharton. She handles all HR policies and workplace culture initiatives. Sarah made a sound somewhere between a whimper and a sob. The blood had drained from her face so completely she looked like a photograph slowly fading to black and white. Giuseppe Romano shuffled forward, his flour-dusted apron trembling. "Signore Rossetti," he said in heavily accented English. "I tried to warn them. I tried to tell Signore Collins who the Signora was, but he would not listen." Antonio's expression softened slightly when he looked at the elderly chef. "Giuseppe, you did the right thing, as always." His gaze hardened again as it shifted to Derek. "But it seems some people need louder warnings, eh?" Maya placed a gentle hand on Antonio's arm. "Caro, let's handle this the new way, the smart way." Antonio's smile was sharp as a blade but warm as summer when he looked at his wife. "Sempre la più intelligente," he murmured, "always the smartest one." He turned back to Derek and Sarah, his expression settling into something that reminded everyone present that being legitimate didn't mean being soft. "Now then," Antonio said, his voice carrying across the silent restaurant like thunder rolling over mountains. "Shall we discuss how you treat my wife in my restaurant?" Marco stepped forward slightly, not threatening, just present, solid, immovable. Frank, the security guard, looked at his own hands, then at Marco's casual confidence, and quietly stepped aside. The shift in power was so complete, so absolute, that even Dorothy's Facebook Live comments fell silent for a moment before exploding in a frenzy of caps-locked excitement. Maya straightened her blazer and smiled, not with triumph, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone whose patience was about to be rewarded in full. "Actually," she said, moving to stand beside her husband, "I think we should discuss a lot more than that." Antonio's presence transformed Bellecourt's atmosphere like a storm front moving through clear skies. The casual authority he commanded wasn't the flashy dominance of nouveau riche. It was something deeper, older, carved from decades of respect earned through methods most people preferred not to think about. Maya opened her Hermes bag and withdrew a sleek MacBook Pro, setting it carefully on Table 12's pristine white tablecloth. The gesture was almost ceremonial, like a general spreading battle plans before a siege. "Derek," Antonio said, his voice carrying the measured cadence of someone accustomed to being heard the first time. "In the old days, disrespecting familia meant consequences. Today, we use lawyers and accountants." His smile was winter sunlight, beautiful but providing no warmth. "Much more painful, no?" Derek's Adam's apple bobbed like a cork in rough water. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the restaurant's perfect climate control. "Mr. Rossetti, please, if I could just explain—" "Spiegazioni later," Antonio interrupted, slipping into Italian as naturally as breathing. "First, we establish facts." Maya's laptop chirped to life, its screen casting blue light across her composed features. With practiced efficiency, she connected to Bellecourt's wall-mounted television via Bluetooth. Within seconds, corporate spreadsheets filled the 70-inch display, numbers and graphs that suddenly made the restaurant feel more like a boardroom than a dining establishment. "Let's discuss business, shall we?" Maya's voice carried the crisp authority of her Wharton MBA, every syllable precisely calculated for maximum impact. Bellecourt's annual revenue, $2.8 million, representing 23% of Rossetti Restaurant Group's total earnings. The numbers appeared in stark white against the dark screen, impossible to ignore or dispute. Several diners leaned forward, suddenly understanding they were witnessing a corporate execution in real time. Vinny stepped closer to Derek, not threatening, just proximate. His voice carried the flat efficiency of someone reading from a very expensive ledger. "Employee costs, Sarah Mitchell, $34,000 annually plus benefits. Derek Collins, $125,000 plus management bonus structure and performance incentives." Maya's fingers danced across her keyboard, bringing up the next slide with surgical precision. "Potential discrimination lawsuit under New York Human Rights Law Section 296. Conservative estimate, $2 to $15 million in damages, plus punitive awards that could triple the base amount." Sarah made a sound like air escaping from a punctured tire. Her legs seemed to be having trouble supporting her weight, and she gripped the hostess station for balance. "But that's just the beginning," Maya continued, her tone conversational despite the devastating content. "Federal Civil Rights Act violations carry additional penalties. Corporate liability for employee actions can void our insurance coverage entirely, leaving the company exposed to unlimited damages." Antonio moved to stand behind Maya's chair, one hand resting gently on her shoulder in a gesture that managed to be both protective and possessive. "And my construction union friends," he added almost casually. "They don't like discrimination either. Makes them uncooperative during contract negotiations. Permits get delayed, inspections take longer, supply chains develop mysterious bottlenecks." The implied threat hung in the air like smoke from expensive cigars. Derek's face had progressed from pale to green, the color of someone realizing their entire world was about to collapse. Marco consulted his phone, reading from what appeared to be carefully compiled notes. "Current social media exposure. Facebook Live, 6,247 viewers and climbing exponentially. TikTok video approaching 75,000 views with acceleration curves suggesting 500,000 by tomorrow morning. Twitter hashtag #Bellecourt racism trending in 3 major markets, with news outlets beginning to pick up the story." Maya advanced to the next slide, a demographic breakdown that painted an uncomfortable picture in stark black and white. Current staff diversity, 94% white, 6% minority. Management structure, 100% white across all positions. Customer complaint records regarding discriminatory treatment. 17 formal complaints in the past year, all buried without investigation or remedial action. Giuseppe Romano watched from the kitchen doorway, his weathered face a mask of vindicated terror. He'd tried to warn them. He'd tried to make them understand what they were dealing with. Now he could only watch the inevitable unfold. 17 families insulted, Antonio said, his voice dropping to something barely above a whisper that somehow carried more menace than shouting ever could. In my neighborhood, that used to be unacceptable. People who showed disrespect to families like mine faced consequences that were immediate and permanent. Derek's phone buzzed insistently. Probably his district manager, alerted by the viral videos spreading across social media like wildfire. He ignored it, his entire focus locked on the numbers destroying his career in real time. At Table 7, Dorothy Carter's Facebook Live had attracted news reporters who were monitoring social media for breaking stories. Comments were flooding in from verified accounts belonging to local politicians, civil rights activists, and entertainment industry figures. The story was transitioning from viral moment to national news in real time. Maya pulled up a news slide showing legal precedents and case studies. Similar discrimination cases, Starbucks settlement $8 million, Denny's class action $54 million. Our legal team estimates potential exposure at the high end of comparable incidents. She paused, letting the implications sink in like water into dry soil. Of course, there's also the criminal liability aspect, Maya continued with academic detachment. Assault charges for the physical contact, possible hate crime enhancements given the racial motivation and public nature of the incident. Sarah's remaining color drained completely. She hadn't considered criminal charges. The slap had felt like righteous indignation in the moment. But under the harsh fluorescent light of legal scrutiny, it looked exactly like what it was, a racially motivated assault captured on multiple cameras. Derek's phone buzzed again, more insistently. This time, several other phones in the restaurant joined in. Managers, owners, executives, all receiving alerts as the story spread through industry networks like wildfire. Maya pulled up the final slide, 2 columns labeled Option A and Option B in corporate-friendly fonts that somehow made the content more terrifying than any mob movie threats. "Derek," she said, her voice carrying the deadly calm of someone holding all the cards. "You have 2 choices. Choose carefully. My husband's patience isn't what it used to be." Antonio's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "In the old days, I had different ways of handling disrespect. Maya taught me better methods, more civilized, but old habits." He shrugged eloquently, the gesture somehow more threatening than any explicit threat. "They die hard, you know." "Option 1, Maya read from the screen with the efficiency of a prosecutor delivering closing arguments. "Immediate termination of Sarah Mitchell and demotion of Derek Collins to assistant manager at our lowest performing location. $50,000 donation to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, paid within 24 hours. Mandatory bias training for all 47 Rossetti Restaurant Group establishments, with Marco and Vinny overseeing employee relations compliance." Vinny cracked his knuckles, a sound like breaking branches that made several diners flinch visibly. "New hiring quotas," Maya continued relentlessly. 40% minority staff within 6 months, with preference given to local community members. Promotion of Giuseppe Romano to executive chef with full authority over kitchen operations. I will personally oversee compliance with full authority to implement additional reforms as needed. She paused, scrolling to reveal additional requirements. Monthly bias audits with public scorecards. Anonymous reporting system for discrimination incidents with direct access to corporate leadership. Zero tolerance policy with automatic termination for any future incidents. Option 2, Maya said, her voice growing colder with each word. We close Bellacourt permanently. 127 jobs were eliminated immediately. Terminate franchise agreements with 12 other operators who've shown similar cultural insensitivity. File a $10 million federal discrimination lawsuit against corporate negligence. Antonio stepped forward, his movement fluid as a dancer's but predatory as a shark's. My union friends will ensure you never work in hospitality again. Legally, of course. Background checks, reference calls, industry blacklisting. Very thorough, very permanent. Marco consulted his phone again, scrolling through social media feeds with practiced efficiency. Current TikTok views, 127,000 and accelerating. The video's going mega viral, boss. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, they're all requesting interviews. This is becoming a national story. Sarah finally found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a croak. You can't fire me for protecting the restaurant from... Antonio's head turned toward her with mechanical precision. When he spoke, his voice carried the kind of quiet menace that made hardened criminals reconsider their life choices. From what, Signorina? From my wife? Maya raised one elegant finger, silencing any response. From black customers, Sarah. Say it. Complete the sentence you started. The challenge hung in the air like a blade suspended over Sarah's career, her reputation, her future. Everyone in the restaurant understood that her next words would determine whether she left Bellecourt quietly or became the face of viral racism for the next news cycle. Derek's phone buzzed again. This time he glanced at it, his district manager probably watching the viral videos and calculating damage control. His career was already over. The only question was how much collateral damage he'd cause on his way down. Tick-tock, Vinny murmured, tapping his Rolex with one thick finger. Decision time, folks. Maya's laptop screen showed the stark reality of their situation. Lose 2 employees and pay some money, or lose everything. For someone with an MBA from Wharton married to a reformed but still dangerous man, it wasn't really a choice at all. Antonio leaned against table 12, his casual posture somehow more intimidating than Frank's aggressive stance had been. You know what I like about the legitimate business world, Derek? Everything is documented, recorded, permanent. He gestured at the dozen phones, still capturing every word. In the old days, these conversations happened in private, much messier cleanup. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Even the other diners had stopped pretending to eat, their meals forgotten as they witnessed what would undoubtedly become one of the most shared videos of the year. Maya saved her presentation and closed the laptop with a soft click that sounded like a coffin lid settling into place. So, she said, her voice carrying the absolute finality of a judge delivering a verdict. What's it going to be? Derek's hands trembled as he reached for his phone, which had been buzzing incessantly for the past 5 minutes. The caller ID showed his district manager's number, but he already knew what that conversation would entail. His career at Bellecourt, hell, his career in hospitality anywhere, was over. Derek's voice cracked like dried leather. He cleared his throat and tried again. I choose option 1. Maya's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes suggested this outcome had never been in doubt. Smart choice. Antonio's smile was all teeth and no warmth. Bene. Very wise, Derek. Much better than the alternative. Sarah Mitchell, Maya announced with the crisp efficiency of a corporate executioner. Your employment with Bellecourt is terminated immediately. Vinnie Marco, please escort Miss Mitchell from the premises. Sarah's composure finally shattered completely. You can't do this! I was protecting the restaurant. I was doing my job. Your job, Antonio said, his voice carrying the kind of quiet menace that had once commanded absolute obedience in very different circumstances, was to serve customers with respect. Instead, you chose to assault my wife in my restaurant. Vinny approached Sarah with the professional courtesy of someone who'd escorted many people from many places over the years. His tone was almost apologetic. Miss, we need you to collect your personal items and leave now. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Sarah looked around the restaurant desperately, seeking support that didn't exist. The other staff members avoided eye contact. The diners continued filming. Even Frank, the security guard, had stepped aside, recognizing superior authority when he saw it. This is discrimination, Sarah protested, her voice rising to near hysteria. You can't fire me for being white. Marco stepped forward, his voice carrying the flat authority of someone reading from a legal brief. Actually, you're being terminated for assault, violation of civil rights laws, and creating a hostile work environment, all documented on multiple video recordings that will be preserved as evidence. Maya opened her laptop again, pulling up what appeared to be an employment termination form that had been prepared with remarkable efficiency. Your final paycheck will be directly deposited within 72 hours, minus deductions for damaged property and legal fees. Legal fees? Sarah's voice cracked like breaking glass. The customer you assaulted has the right to press criminal charges, Maya explained with academic detachment. Assault in the 3rd degree, Possible hate crime enhancement. That's entirely her decision, of course. Antonio's expression suggested Maya's decision might be influenced by how gracefully Sarah accepted her termination. Vinny placed a gentle but firm hand on Sarah's elbow. "Time to go, miss. We'll have your personal items sent to whatever address you provide." As Sarah was escorted toward the exit, her protests echoing off the marble walls, Derek watched his own professional destruction unfold with the fascination of someone witnessing a car accident in slow motion. "Derek Collins," Maya continued, consulting her laptop screen. "Effective immediately, you are demoted to assistant manager at our Newark location. Your salary is reduced to $45,000 annually, and you will complete 40 hours of bias training within the next 30 days? Derek nodded numbly. Newark was their worst-performing restaurant, located in a neighborhood where his particular brand of casual racism would be rapidly corrected by customers and staff alike. Furthermore, Maya added, you will be on probationary status for 1 year. Any further incidents, any complaints, any discrimination, any hint of the behavior we witnessed today will result in immediate termination and a permanent industry blacklist. Marco consulted his phone, reading from what appeared to be prepared notes. Your replacement as general manager will be Keisha Williams, former civil rights attorney, currently managing our downtown location. She'll arrive tomorrow morning to begin the transition. Giuseppe Romano emerged fully from the kitchen, his relief palpable. In heavily accented English, he addressed Antonio directly. Signore Rossetti, grazie. Thank you for bringing justice to this place. Antonio's expression softened when he looked at the elderly chef. Giuseppe, you tried to warn them. You showed loyalty and respect. That matters. Maya pulled up a new presentation, this one labeled the Maya Protocol. Effective immediately, all Rossetti Restaurant Group establishments will implement the following reforms. The first slide appeared on the wall-mounted television. Zero tolerance discrimination policy. The text was clear, unambiguous, and backed by the kind of legal language that left no room for interpretation. Real-time bias reporting app for all employees, Maya read, clicking through slides with practiced efficiency. Anonymous customer feedback system with direct access to corporate leadership. Monthly diversity audits with public scorecards available on our website. She paused on a slide showing financial commitments. $50,000 donation to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, paid within 24 hours. $10,000 monthly fund for discrimination prevention programs. $100,000 annual scholarship fund for minority culinary students. Antonio stepped forward, addressing not just Derek, but the entire restaurant. My wife taught me that real power isn't about fear. It's about respect earned through fairness. This is how we do business now. At Table 7, Dorothy Carter's Facebook Live had reached 12,000 concurrent viewers. Comments were flooding in from civil rights organizations, local politicians, and national news outlets requesting permission to use the footage. Jessica's TikTok had exploded past 200,000 views, with reaction videos and commentary already appearing across multiple platforms. The hashtag #JusticeServedCold was trending nationally, competing with #Maya Protocol for social media dominance. Maya clicked to the final slide, Community Investment Initiative. The numbers were staggering. Preferential contracts for minority-owned suppliers, partnerships with local civil rights organizations, and mandatory community service hours for all management staff. This incident will never happen again in any of our establishments, Maya announced, her voice carrying across the silent restaurant like a bell tolling the end of an era. Not because we're afraid of bad publicity, but because it's simply the right thing to do. Frank, the security guard, approached Derek hesitantly. Sir, should I call the police about the assault? Maya and Antonio exchanged a look, an entire conversation conducted in the silent language of couples who'd weathered storms together. That won't be necessary, Maya said finally. Justice has been served. Derek gathered what remained of his dignity and nodded toward Antonio. Mr. Rossetti, sir, I'll clean out my office and report to Newark tomorrow morning. Derek, Antonio said, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been mercy. This is your second chance. Use it wisely. As Derek shuffled toward the back office to collect his belongings, Giuseppe approached Maya and Antonio with obvious relief. Signore, he said, his weathered hands clasped together. Finally, this place has honor again. Maya smiled, the first genuinely warm expression she'd shown since arriving at Bellecourt. Giuseppe, how would you feel about being promoted to executive chef? Full authority over kitchen operations, 30% salary increase. The old man's eyes filled with tears. Signora, you honor an old man. Antonio clapped Giuseppe on the shoulder with genuine affection. You earned it, amico. Loyalty and respect, these things matter. As the immediate crisis resolved, the other diners slowly began to return to their meals, though conversation remained subdued. Everyone understood they'd witnessed something significant, not just a viral moment, but a genuine transformation. Maya closed her laptop and slipped it back into her purse. The corporate presentation was over, but the real work was just beginning. Bene, Antonio said, surveying his restaurant with satisfaction. Now we eat. Giuseppe, what do you recommend for my wife? She's had a difficult afternoon. Giuseppe's face lit up like Christmas morning. For the singer, I prepared something special, something that shows proper respect. As the elderly chef hurried back to his kitchen with renewed purpose, Maya and Antonio settled at table 12, the VIP spot that had started this entire confrontation. The revolution was complete. The kingdom had new rules, and everyone understood exactly who made them. 1 month later, Maya returned to Bellecourt for lunch. The transformation was remarkable, not just in the diverse faces behind the counter, but in the energy itself. The restaurant hummed with genuine warmth instead of manufactured politeness. Keisha Williams, the new general manager, greeted Maya personally at the door. A former civil rights attorney with silver-streaked natural hair and sharp intelligence behind wire-rimmed glasses, Keisha had turned Bellecourt into a model of inclusive hospitality. Mrs. Rossetti, your usual table is ready, Keisha said with professional warmth that felt authentic rather than calculated. Maya smiled as she was seated at table 12, the same spot where her humiliation had transformed into revolution. The view hadn't changed. The city skyline still stretched endlessly beyond floor-to-ceiling windows, but everything else was different. Her server was Marcus Thompson, a young black man pursuing his culinary degree at night while working days. His movements carried the confidence of someone who belonged exactly where he was. Good afternoon, Mrs. Rossetti. Chef Giuseppe has prepared something special for you today. His grandmother's recipe for osso buco, passed down through 4 generations. Giuseppe himself emerged from the kitchen moments later, his weathered face glowing with pride. At 72, he moved with renewed energy, no longer burdened by the weight of working in a place that violated his deepest values. Signora Maya, he said, placing the dish before her with ceremonial care, this is how we honor respect. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same dining room where she'd been told she didn't belong now celebrated her presence like visiting royalty. But Maya took no pleasure in the reversal, only satisfaction in the systematic change it represented. Her phone buzzed with notification after notification. The original TikTok video had reached 2.3 million views, spawning thousands of reaction videos, news segments, and academic discussions about workplace discrimination. Justice served cold had become a rallying cry for service industry workers facing similar treatment. But the real impact went beyond viral fame. Maya's inbox overflowed with messages from people sharing their own stories. Restaurant workers who'd faced discrimination, customers who'd witnessed injustice, managers implementing bias training after seeing what happened at Bellecourt. 3 major restaurant chains had voluntarily adopted versions of the Maya protocol. Harvard Business School had requested a case study interview. The mayor's office had invited her to join the Business Equity Council. Most importantly, 847 people had submitted discrimination stories in response to the video, creating a database of experiences that civil rights organizations were using to target systemic reform. Antonio arrived precisely at 1:30 p.m., as always. But instead of Vinny and Marco, he was accompanied by David Carter, their new head of community relations. Dorothy's son, hired after his mother's viral Facebook Live, had demonstrated the power of citizen journalism. Amore, Antonio said, kissing Maya's cheek before settling beside her. How are the quarterly diversity reports looking? Ahead of schedule, Maya replied, pulling up data on her phone. Minority hiring up 43% across all locations, customer satisfaction scores at record highs, and She smiled with particular satisfaction. 3 copycat reforms from competitor chains. Antonio's expression held the quiet pride of someone who discovered that doing right could be more powerful than doing wrong. My grandfather would not recognize the business I run now, but I think he would respect it. The man who'd once commanded respect through fear now earned it through fairness. The transformation hadn't diminished his authority, it had elevated it. Antonio, Maya said, covering his hand with hers, you've become the man I always knew you could be. Their conversation was interrupted by a familiar chime, Maya's phone buzzing with yet another interview request. This time from 60 Minutes, wanting to explore how former organized crime figures could become leaders in social justice. The redemption story America needs to see, the producer's email read. Maya showed Antonio the message. He laughed, a sound of genuine amusement rather than bitter irony. From a made man to make over, he said. Think we should do it? Only if they promise not to make us look like saints, Maya replied. Real change is messy. People need to see that. As they finished Giuseppe's masterpiece, Osso Buco, Maya reflected on the journey from that terrible afternoon to this moment of quiet triumph. Power wielded with wisdom created more lasting change than power wielded with force. Her phone buzzed one final time, not with an interview request, but with a comment on the original TikTok video. Watching this gave me courage to report my boss for harassment. Thank you for showing that dignity wins. Maya smiled and typed back, your courage changed your workplace. That's how real transformation happens. One person, one moment, one choice at a time. The revolution wasn't just complete, it was spreading. Has discrimination ever made you feel powerless? Share your story in the comments. Your voice matters, and your experience could spark the change someone else desperately needs. Hit that share button to spread awareness. Subscribe to Black Tales Stories for more accounts of ordinary people creating extraordinary change through courage, dignity, and strategic action. Remember, the most powerful response to injustice isn't anger or revenge. It's systematic change that ensures no one else faces the same treatment. Maya Johnson-Rossetti proved that real power comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. What story will you tell? What change will you create? Your moment might be closer than you think.